Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Emmett, for having us back. What I'd like to do today is update everybody on our integrin regulating portfolio in both front and back of the eye diseases. We made some very nice progress over the last few months. Allegro is a private biotech company based in Southern California. We have an integrin regulating portfolio of compounds both for retina and front of the eye diseases. We have a strong experienced management team, and basically resitiganim is our lead asset in retina. We just completed earlier this summer our first US phase 2A study in dry AMD with intermediate dry AMD patients. And what we found basically was that we met our primary endpoint. We were the first to show a robust reversal of vision loss in dry AMD in a controlled study in the US. We also expanded our portfolio to a topical eye drop, ALG 1007. We've already completed our first human proof of concept study, ex-US, with a robust signal we'll share with you today, and we already have a follow-on study as well, ongoing in dry eye. Again, looking at our portfolio, resitiganim in retina is in late-stage development in DME and intermediate dry AMD, and ALG 1007, the topical drop, is in its second study in humans, an exploratory phase 2 study in dry eye. When we look mechanistically at how this class of drug works, these are all small RGD class integrin peptides. They downregulate multiple integrins responsible for the stress response in the eye. What's interesting, especially when we're going to talk about dry AMD today, is a novel thing that we've discovered recently is the improvements in visual acuity in dry AMD are being driven by the mitochondrial stabilization effects of this drug. When we look at our first US 2A intermediate dry AMD study, the goal of this study was to compare 1 milligram of resitiganim or luminate against a sham injection. The primary endpoint was pre-specified as a 1.5 or 8 letters of visual acuity improvement in intermediate dry AMD. Just to take a step back, so these patients are about 5 years before they would develop geographic atrophy. These patients typically have something around 20/50, 20/60 visual acuity. They can still function, but they can't read or drive or work. So they're still on the eye chart, but they have some visual disabilities. What we basically showed is this study gave intravitreal injections twice over a 32-week period versus a sham injection. There were 7 sites across the US that are very well known, and Trial Runners was the CRO for the study, and Duke was the reading center for the study. The primary endpoint was 2 injections of resitiganim versus a sham injection with a pre-specified primary endpoint of 8 letters, a 1.5 of visual acuity improvement. We were very happy to say we met our primary endpoint. We were the first people to show in a controlled study a robust reversal of vision loss recovery in intermediate dry AMD. 48% of the patients met the primary endpoint of at least an 8-letter improvement in visual acuity versus 7% of the sham. The results were statistically significant. We also looked at other secondary endpoints like higher thresholds, microperimetry, color vision, OCT analysis, and the safety profile was excellent. There were no drug-related SAEs. Looking at higher thresholds of visual acuity improvement in intermediate dry AMD, looking at 10-letter gainers, about a third of the patients were 10-letter gainers. About 20% of the patients were 15-letter gainers in intermediate dry AMD versus 0 of the sham. While the primary endpoint was statistically significant with these small numbers, these higher thresholds showed a strong trend but were not statistically significant. We had our successful end of phase 2 meeting with FDA 2 weeks ago, and I'm very happy to say that we have a clear path forward to move into our larger phase 2b/3 studies in the US. We've also completed our OCT analysis of these patients and can now very comfortably predict who is going to do well and not well at baseline OCT analysis in these studies. We're currently working with our retina advisory board and external experts to put together the final details of this study, and we expect to start our larger US phase 2b/3 study in intermediate dry AMD the first half of next year. Turning our attention to our front of the eye programs, this is not as far along. ALG 1007 is our topical eye drop for dry eye disease. You get a robust anti-inflammatory effect with this drug that interferes with T-cell adhesion and migration. The first study that we did in humans in dry eye disease for this topical eye drop was completed at the beginning of this year. It was an open-label dose escalation study and showed a robust signal in the signs and symptoms of dry eye disease in a 90-day study. Again, the highest dose, 0.6%, gave us a robust clinical signal and with statistically significant multiple signs and symptoms. We got a nice dose response curve as well, no AEs and excellent tolerability. In summary, we spent all of our efforts working on this novel anti-integrin portfolio for front and back of the eye diseases. In retina, rezutiginib just completed our first US phase 2 study in dry AMD and showed a robust reversal of vision loss of at least 8 letters and many patients at 10 and 15 letters of visual recovery. And we have a clear path forward for our first phase 2b/3 study in the US for the first half of next year. For our topical eye drop, ALG 1007, again, we finished our first human proof of concept study already ex-US with a robust signal, and we're already working on, and we already have underway our second ex-US phase 2 study in dry eye as well. Thank you.